Bonsoir, merci. Thank you so much for being here. I unfortunately don't speak French, and so I will be reading in English. And I'm so glad to see your dog. I really miss my dog. So I want to read a couple of poems from my third book, Transformer, which came out in 2020. And Marissa and I were just talking about the frustration of having books come out during COVID when you can't go and tour and talk to people in person and everything's on Zoom. So it's really exciting to get to read to people in person in the same room. So I'm so grateful to Gwen Strauss and to this wonderful residency. So it's really, really great to be here. The first poem I want to read is a poem that was inspired by a painting in the Thyssen Museum in Madrid. And the painting was done by Bührer, is the name of the artist, and it was a late medieval, early Renaissance period oil painting. And it was commissioned probably by the subject, whose name was Röckingen. And if you look at the image, you'll notice that it's a little different from the poem because I changed what was happening in the painting to write the poem. So it's called An Old Man in Great Trouble. The famished ermine trimming the patrician's coat was meant as an emblem of wealth. Is this the real-time sorrow? And how did Bührer bring it out on the patron's face through brumal medieval afternoons when they sit near each other as still as two lemons, fire-thinned, the stubborn paint thickening like an adolescent's neck. Licking a brush, the painter brings in a worker from the farmyard below the windowsill, where Röckingen rests his hand, the jewel in his ring pushing out of the canvas. What is the life of a poor man, the least bit lit at the tip of a stick of incense, whose name isn't on the frame's plate, his knee cocked, who leans over a wall, stares at a ruin on the horizon, fly-sized both man and castle. He's supposed to be raking, but his mind is paralyzed, like a cart's wheel half sunk in mud. Is it his illness unidentified, or the antique disaster of his father's maiming, or another more general trouble, too great to contain in one homunculus, undulating invisibly over the expanse, dormant fields backed by foothills, then the inexorable elevations, each layer colder and darker of blue. And the next one, actually the last poem I'll read from this book, is also about artwork. I really like to write about artwork, so it's especially nice to be here and to get to be in residency with a painter, because we've been getting to talk about that. And so this poem is about the Parthenon marbles, which I'm sure some of you all have seen in the British Museum, which were stolen from Greece. And so Parthenon marbles. Why do we fail our spouses when we can remember their sweetness when we were young? Time still ran slowly for us. Weather was never an impediment, money even. Who needed to be right? Who needed sleep or words? Last words floating in thick clarity, concentration, 2 coffee beans and a glass of anise, skiffs on an expensive lake, pair of black ducks in Zurich June's chill waves. Our languor as a swan beat its feet across the surface, running on water for 14, 20 meters, straining its awful body, changing, elongating, almost ascending. Now the evening like this instrument, slowly going dry. The fountain pen, the light, the minds inside your skull and his. Love survives like those sublime reliefs whose torsos live, more or less, in the British Museum. Master, maiden, warrior, even the cow stretching to smell earth before its sacrifice. In which private collection or lofty public hall could we find the heads, the hearts that once were ours? And so I want to switch now to my second book that some of which I wrote here. It's called I Will Not Kick My Friends, which is something that a friend of mine told me her child had to write down many times on a bulletin board or a chalkboard, which I thought was quite amusing. So, not being a parent myself, but so this book has more fragmentation in it in style, and so this poem I'll read to you is quite fragmented. So if it sounds a little bit strange, don't worry, it's not you, it's the poem. And there's a reference to someone named J.B. that represents John Berryman, an American poet whose work I really enjoy. And tonic, the title tonic, I was thinking about music, the tonic chord. I was thinking about tonic in the sense of something that's healthful, you know, salubrious, kind of like tonic water. So if you're a French and English speaker, you might pick up on some of that strange English. Tonic. Let's fly to Dubai. It takes 68 hours. When you get there, you'll be changed into an engineer from heaven. You want to make thought visible, so write it down, but the math's wrong. Man of the people, he eats oatmeal for 15 years. What do you think will happen if you don't? JB, you pop into my head whenever I'm scared or lonely. Beneath his beard, he, handsome man, made calculations upside down across the board. Back home, pieces of lettuce stain the sink with ants and people work too hard. The snake in the garden lives on after poisoning visiting cattle dog who knew too much. The only way to learn is hard ways. In the bathroom with blue metal flashlight, you look down into my scalp. The facts are smaller than they feel. Brain makes you want to break the rhythm in the main before returning to the tonic chord. Finney works too hard in his own sleep, 4 legs running sideways, acoustical grunts. Be at peace, my dear. Those scales will be here when you wake up. Whenever scared, I'm lonely. Ants make a Maltese cross in our sink. The ceiling fan is simple cinema, solid wooden X that turns into a circle you can see through to the ceiling. Turn the image off. We have to go to sleep. Fly on, my engineer. We're always at the point of no return. And so this next poem, it was written around the American presidential election. And a friend of mine was letting me stay at her home because I was teaching 2 days in a row in San Francisco and it was too much driving. And she had a childhood book that was the picture book of saints. So I used to look at this book on the bookshelf when I would be going to bed. So I started thinking about saints, writing poems about saints. So it's called Dreamland Saint. See this saint from dreamland, slumming with us where every limb sweats, mercury rising, fruit baking in its bowl on the drain board. Polio, Ebola, and fresh new diseases in desiccated Eden. The neighborhood a locus of explosions. Our nation now the nation of murderous event. Unlicensed carrying on. Unexceptional our state of war. How does violence vibrate in her cranium? Tuned to ocean, birdsong, intricate chant in caverns of 7-second reverberation. Cathedrals of empathy, whose marriages all thrive like headland redwoods bathed in a cycle of sunlight and fog for centuries. Dreamland Saint, appear to our electorate in fall. Replace the suits on new screens. Fill our representatives with joy, humble, as though they could make a durable good. So in the United States, durable goods are things like refrigerators, washer dryers. So I love the idea of all these politicians being able to make something really useful like a washer dryer. So this poem I wrote at the Dora Maar house in 2014 when I was here. And it's a poem that is about one of my favorite local towns. It's called Marché la Sourgue. Each lover is at the other's mercy. How many states and waves between us for these attenuated summer weeks? By my dream's distortion formula, the distance is only a few seats on a city bus, from which I watch a stranger circle your wrist with her hand. However wary the unconscious, in daylight, brilliant externals of this urbis place put me at ease at my own mercy, drifting in the market stream of dark eyes, sunbathed faces. Who could find a hippogriff or serpent among the fragrant compass roses? In a fountain's music, ball and loose, who would hope to hear mathematics, subtle architecture of the rules we agreed to share? And I'm just going to read a few more. How are you guys doing? So this poem is for Gwen, and it's a mathematics poem. So we were talking about mathematics recently, and James Gleick writes these wonderful books about scientists for lay people, and this was inspired by his book, The Information, which is about early computer scientists. So it's called Saints of Metamathematics. If the manly barber shears all men, and also shears only those who don't shear themselves, must he be bald? Russell makes rules against recursion, paradox, Principia Mathematica. His system of completeness runs without a hitch, until another genius, Gödel, proves some of math's truths forever are unprovable. And Turing shows that incomputable numbers outnumber other numbers. Uncertainty lives in any formal system, is fused with language, locked in logic, baked into mathematics like 4 and 20 blackbirds in pi. I don't look like who I am. Monastery, verdigris, excelsior, all fail to prevail in hangman, whereas heifer unpredictably wins. Framed in 9 panels of foxed mirror glass, she squints into image. I can't look at who I am. I was introduced as a plot point in 1975, the year an undeterminable number of elephants were killed by poachers, matriarchs taken for their tusks. It takes time to get past anything as indispensable as youth. Boole and other saints think it's okay to think of thinking as a game, to think of language as an instrument of reason. Material our thoughts are made of, not just conveyed by. Watching limbs of pine lift in the wind, I'm thinking, what do I want now? Constable wanted to do justice by the trees. The day is near as long as it will ever be. So I just have a couple more really short ones for you guys. I think I'll actually just read one more. This poem is, well, no, I'm going to read 2 more, but they're short, I promise. So this one is for Francoise, and when I went to the Louvre, I was distressed because most of the paintings were by men, and so this poem is about that. Missing in the Louvre. Invisible pictures hang between the masterpieces in museums. Ours are 2 such slender centuries, exhausted by waste, graced by emancipations. 1/2 of humanity achingly becoming recognized as human. As human is a dark and halting animal, ever possessive of its own framed place in hallowed space. So we need more women painters in the Louvre. And this last poem is because, you know, as probably many of you or all of you have been thinking about the war in Ukraine, thinking about what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And this is a poem for Navalny, and so I'm thinking also of the Russians who are dissidents and who are being imprisoned and protesting and active against that war. Navalny, the Russian politician who's been in prison for, you know, like over a year now. You have a hard time remembering it's spring. I have the very things you want and cannot see. I dream of you, comrade in humanity, standing up in prison with your eyes down to survive. I dream I wake up in flowers, but I haven't been laid down. not dead, but not resurrected. I dream they work you ceaselessly. I scare myself awake and must rise or forget. It's spring. You are not dead, not resurrected. I write to you in faith and sorrows foreign to myself, as though they were already translated to Russian. Thank you so much.